I think Michel is...
Did we lose him?
I think we lost him.
I thought that he was so kind to kind of, remove his video so that we get more exposure, but I think we lost him.
Right. So there you go. This what happens. This what happens. Oh shit, well, there you go. Welcome to Table Stakes, where we dive deep into the real conversations that shape customer experience. I'm Michel Stevens, course director at CXM Academy. And today we're tackling one of the questions that can haunt you for several years. Should I take the entrepreneurial leap into CX? Whether you're considering freelancing, launching your own consultancy, or ditching the traditional 9-to-5 to build something entirely your own, this conversation is for you. I'm here with three incredible companions who have not only walked this path, but have lived it through both the exciting highs and the soul-crushing lows of entrepreneurship. Today's conversation is about the raw, unfiltered reality of what it means to forge your own path. We'll explore the skills that you actually need beyond your own expertise, the mindset that can make or break your journey, and most importantly, the honest truths no one talked about on the shiny LinkedIn posts. But first, let me introduce you to our three guests, each of whom has taken a different path in customer experience. So maybe we'll start with Ellis. Ellis, could you give us a 90-second snapshot of yourself?
Yes, thank you. So very happy to be here. My name is Ellis. I work as a neuro-hospitality consultant. So basically, I help restaurants, hotels, and food service companies to increase their guest spending by improving the guest experience with a base in neuromarketing and consumer psychology. So basically, I combine academic research with practical strategies to help them. Very concrete, that means optimizing their menu, applying pricing psychology, optimizing their guest journey, both offline and online. And thereby, the aim is always to attract more guests and increase their spend.
I don't know, Bartek, if you will be able to top that, but it's your turn. Tell us who you are.
I will certainly not be able to top that. But a few kind of humble things about myself. So I'm Bartek. Hello. I now work as a customer experience and marketing guide. I don't like the word consultant for myself because I tend to work really together with people and we kind of go hand by hand, with me being sometimes a little bit in front, but basically leading the teams through the journey. And I usually help teams with organizing the strategies and coming up with the ways to organize chaos, but in the way that it later on drives growth. I help many companies with transformations that are actually working because a lot of the transformations actually fail, and I help companies to make the cut and actually deliver the successful ones, either the digital transformations or customer transformations. And I also work with leaders to basically help them get promoted. I've done my work in the trenches in the big organizations, and I know how to push the right buttons so that the work that you do actually kind of materializes and you getting promoted. And before, I used to work a lot in retail, in FMCG, but also with a lot of technology beside that, on various levels, working in trenches in the marketing department, then being CMO for IKEA, but also working on the board of directors and as a team of board member to actually drive a massive transformations for companies like IKEA as well, or Play, or any other big telco retail companies. Yeah, wow. So that's a little bit about me, and thank you for having me again.
Bartek, my pleasure. Anamaya, could you complete our trio, please?
Yes, certainly. So my name is Anna-Maija Tanninen and I'm from Helsinki, Finland. I'm a B2B specific customer experience advisor. So my background is a blend of strategy consulting and hands-on experience from the B2B field. So I studied my career in Accenture actually, so fresh out of university, and I learned how to create a beautiful PowerPoint presentation. During those 4 years, no, seriously, I learned a lot of valuable skills. But I mean, if you start your career in consulting, at some point you really want to move to in-house role to get the actual hands-on experience. 7 years of my career, I worked in a global B2B company, Kone Elevator and Escalators, and I was heading the customer loyalty program. And we started with NPS, and during the years, we evolved from NPS to kind of a cultural transformation. And that was really eye-opening journey because it really taught me a lot about how these complex B2B organizations operate and what does customer centricity mean. So in 2019, it was time for me to kind of go and look for some other opportunities. I felt like now I need to take these learnings to some other company. But instead of going to another corporate role, I actually stepped back into consultancy. And in the past 2.5 years, I have had my own boutique consultancy CX agency. So I'm a solopreneur at the moment, but have my first official teammate, a junior consultant. And it's been an exciting journey. So really, really happy to share some of those results and also reflect with you, Elle and Bartek, regarding your experiences.
All right, Anamaya, thank you. What was the specific moment or situation that made you seriously consider leave traditional employment for entrepreneurship? That is the question that is absolutely on my mind. And Ellis, how long did you sit with that idea before actually taking action?
Yeah, I think quite a lot of time, although it wasn't always that present. From when I was actually kind of very young, I've always wanted to start my own company once, but that was more like in the future. And I thought back then that I would want to start my own restaurant, so in the hospitality, but a little bit different. But like over time, I think I got really interested by the brain as well and by marketing and that part from business. And I did my master's degree also in marketing management. And then I started to get to know like the concept of neuromarketing. And I started to become like a little bit fascinated about the brain. So after my studies, I started at a neuromarketing agency. And there I learned a lot of how to apply neuromarketing and psychology in all kinds of branches, sectors. But specifically, I started to realize that although we apply neuromarketing and psychology a lot in retail, I didn't hear a lot about applying it to hospitality. And with my background and my interest in I actually started to write about it on a Dutch blog site, and just for fun, actually, in my free time. And then I started to get phone calls if I could like give trainings on that. And that was a moment that I thought, okay, well, maybe because I get calls, maybe this is the idea that I have to start my own business in. So I'm also a solo entrepreneur. And that is the moment that like a couple of months later, I took the decision to leave my job and to go for this full time. In the beginning, I thought, well, maybe I can start it by doing that 1 day a week. But then I thought it was so easy to say, okay, yeah, I will do it next week, because it was, of course, yeah, a little bit new. Yeah. So that is why I thought if I want to make this a success or try to make it a success, I have to do it full time. So that's why I ultimately made that decision.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And yeah, I can absolutely relate to that one as well. And I'm not sure about you, Anamaya or Bartek, but it's something that creeps up on you, right? It's something that organically grows on you.
I mean, I fully agree. At least I never thought about becoming an entrepreneur. That was not in my plans, or establish my own company. But I mean, I guess like during the years, I've like fell in love with customer experience. I really love the topic. The kind of my thinking is from the B2B side of customer experience, and that's like my home, my field. As a consultant, after my years at Kone, I really got frustrated because I see all the benchmarks are always from the B2C. And if you go in a large manufacturing company, they are very traditional, very complex. So if you go there and you present like an Amazon or Uber case, it doesn't resonate, it more alienates. So I got really frustrated that why is it kind of like this, like CX also applies to B2B, and it also applies in these contexts where like you have various different customers and you are working together for years to like build like something together, and then you have the maintenance processes and all this, like the full life cycle. But the same principles of CX apply. You just need to kind of like take into consideration that this is not about purchasing. It's not about getting a product, using it, returning. So it's like very, very different compared to, for instance, retail. So I really wanted to develop some like specific methods and best practices for B2B. So that was kind of my calling to really start my own company. So I could just focus on this topic and I wouldn't need to kind of, like care about this B2C world anymore, because that has never been my calling. All this like a purchasing, transactional CX, that has never been my calling. So it's always been B2B. So that kind of like drove me to start my own consultancy.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting that you never thought about, let's say, becoming consultant. Like for me, it was honestly like I had a completely different approach, because for me, this was always like I knew that I will do it at a certain moment. Because my plan is relatively simple. It's just basically, to get rich, live on the beach, and just kind of enjoy life relatively quickly, hopefully. Still, it didn't materialize. But then I thought, like, okay, I'm gonna be lying on this beach and kind of going fishing, etc. But ultimately, like, I'm gonna get bored at certain moments. Yeah. So when you're gonna be living on this beach, like there are actually very few things that you could do with your previous experience. So I thought like, okay, I will have to do probably some sort of a consulting job at certain moment. So I always had this vision. But for me, let's say this kind of really the breakthrough moment was that when I ended a job in my company and I still got kind of like paid for a couple of months. And I started to do work with a number of friends that I always wanted to work with them. But I thought like, okay, since I'm going to be looking for a job and it's going to take a couple of months, like, I might try and see how it goes, with one friend and the other that I always wanted to cooperate with, because I think, they're brilliant people. And then it started to grow. And I started to enjoy it actually. But then I got a job offer from a headhunter who I was working, and I was like literally in only one process because I didn't want to go forward. And they came with like really brilliant offer, like, 25% bump, like all these fancy titles in the number of different companies, etc., etc. But then kind of I sat down and reflected, looked at the job descriptions, what I needed to do. And I sat down, I had this kind of moment of realization that I basically know exactly what I'm going to do for the next 3 years of this job. Because I already did it. Like, do I really want to go through it one more time? And it was a tough option, but I decided like, okay, let's go for it. Worst case scenario, I'm going to find another job maybe later on. And I refused the job offer and I started to do it on my own. And I'm not going to lie to you, like there are moments that I wish I have taken the offer. But ultimately, like, I still enjoy the life that I have. So I guess it worked out quite positively.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been there, right? It creeps up on you, and then there is this catalyst that says, I'm going to do this, and then take the leap of faith. So you made that mental decision, but then comes the practical reality of actually making it happen. Let's talk about that good stuff first. When people romanticize entrepreneurship, what are they actually getting right? When you wake up and you realize you can structure your day whatever you want or however you want, how does that feel?
I think that from, let's say, work and life perspective, I think in general, when I actually started to think a bit more seriously about, let's say, becoming a consultant, because it kind of happened by accident, actually, I started to reflect on, okay, so, how I would like to sell myself, or at least like kind of what kind of services should I offer? And I think that one of the interesting thing for me, and like at first I was thinking like, okay, let's do it rationally, like, let's look at the market, think about the opportunities, kind of, where I could earn the most money and all these kinds of things. But then, and I started to do it a little bit, but I didn't feel it, honestly. And for me, I think that the breakthrough thing was kind of to, take a step back from it and think about how me in my previous role would like to be helped. Yeah, like kind of if I were myself 4, 5, 6 years ago, what kind of services would I want to have? And this is where it started to grow on me that kind of I don't want to be a consultant. Like no offense, like Anna-Maija, like I think that Accenture, etc., are great company, but for me it was always like a massive frustration with these consultants coming in and like I know it all. I'm gonna solve this and that. Like this is simple, and you guys weren't able to just basically figure it out or themselves lay out this plan that sounds simple but is actually really difficult to implement later on. But then they get the paycheck and they leave, and they leave you with all this hard work to do. And this is where all the things go wrong, and this is where I think the consultant doesn't, as such, like they usually don't add value. And I thought like, okay, like this is the moment where I would like to actually help.
I actually fully agree with your point that, I mean, first of all, to be honest, many consultants have a bad reputation because they do exactly like you said. They kind of come in, they bring their expertise, they do some deliverables, and then they leave. And as someone who has been there on the other side, the one who has been kind of like needing this consulting support and needing this, I think your comment on kind of thinking that what is it that I would have appreciated as a customer really resonated with me, because most of the times I'm thinking about my clients, the relationship is actually very personal because my clients are also in very different stages of their CX maturity. Some have been doing it for over a decade, some are just starting. So it's not like I can come in and say that this is how we do it, 1, 2, 3 steps, and it's going to be done. Depends on the situation. Of course, there are some frameworks and best practices, but I think the key thing is to understand your customer's unique situation and help. For me, the biggest motivation is to see when my clients actually are able to advance what they do, or they can, get regular meetings with their management team as a result of the work we've done together. For me, that's like the biggest payoff of it all. And during the years, I've seen that basically I want my clients to succeed. I really want them to succeed, and I don't need to be there on the spotlight. I mean, I'm the kind of the person who is there in the background helping them to succeed. And I think this is a very different thinking to the traditional consultancy, where the consultants come in and they are the experts. They kind of like take the spotlight and then they leave. And that has never been like something I want to do. And I don't think the clients want that either. They want to get some practical help that helps them to advance and get to the next stage. That's why they hire, or that's why they should hire consultants, so that they build the capabilities in-house and they can survive without a consultant who then leaves one day. Because I mean, if you never leave, then I think you haven't done your job very well either.
I really like the comment about this kind of, the genuine mindset to help. I think this is really spot on. And I think that people also sense it, like when you have really like the genuine deep interest in terms of helping the other ones, your clients. And yeah, I really like that.
I feel that drive as well, that sense of pride when you set somebody up for success and you see them succeed in what they do. Very early in my consulting career, because I have a consultant background as well, but very early on, one of my mentors said, you know what, there is one thing you should know. If you're in consulting, you're actually making people's careers if you do it right. So whatever you do, try to make them succeed at all times. It is not about you. It is absolutely 100% about your client and their organization. So, and that was something that stuck with me up until now, where I also recognize what you said, Anamaya, is that the examples that I was seeing around me were actually always, they were not applicable to our European contexts, because I've always worked in rather complex environments with many cultures, many languages, a lot of legacy as well. And that I always found a struggle when you saw the case studies that were clear cut. They were very straightforward. And that didn't resonate with me. And I said, how can we learn something from that, applying it to our own very difficult context? So that's something I really, really agree upon. Sorry, but Alice, I cut you off there.
No, I was just wondering, I think it's also like a matter of curiosity, right? So to have like a genuine interest in other people in companies. And I think that in the past, during my work at the agency. Well, I now do something actually kind of different, because in the hospitality industry, neuromarketing is relatively new. But I think like having that genuine interest is like the base of having fun at your job, but also doing it right, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I always wondered, what is it like to build something that is truly yours? How does that sense of ownership change how you approach your work? Does that change your approach to how you work, Ellis?
I think so. Yeah. When I had a job in that agency, I always thought that I always tried to look at the company as if it was mine. But now, like 1.5 years later, having my own company, I now realize that that wasn't possible at the time. I think that when it's all yours and you can do it the way you want it, and you also have to live with the consequences of every decision, that makes you look completely different. That makes you be more cautious sometimes, but other times like do it relatively fast. So I think it's a whole other lens, actually, a whole other perspective. And that's very fun. I enjoy it a lot, but it's also very scary sometimes. So yeah, if you speak about highs and lows, I experience them way more right now than 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, now behind every success story, and as you indicate, there are moments that nearly broke you, right? The parts that don't make it into the fancy LinkedIn posts or conference presentations. Anamaya, working for yourself can be incredibly lonely as well. And I was wondering, how do you deal with the isolation, especially when you're used to being part of a team?
100%. I mean, I'm a people person and I enjoy working with others. So I think this is the only low of having your own company and not like a huge company. So you mainly rely on yourself. But from the beginning, I kind of made the decision that this is not how I want to do it. I want to have a network of people around me. I cannot hire 10 consultants here immediately, hopefully one day, but I want to have a network. So I have deliberately built that network from day one. And as a testimony of that network, for instance, now for 2 years, I have run this Nordic B2B CX conference with a Danish company called Customer Agency. And I met the CEO, Torben, on LinkedIn initially. We discussed, we clicked, we think the same way about CX. And we both also agreed that even we are in the same field, we're not competitors. We can bring something together that benefits our customers so we can build value together. And I think this is the key kind of a mindset change for me, that if you feel that you are alone, look at the networks around you. And you can also collaborate with so-called competitors. If your kind of a shared goal is to generate value to your customers. And I'm actually hosting an event next week here in Helsinki with another entrepreneur woman who works in the CX field. And we are combining our clients together. We are bringing them together to this event. And we are building something together. And that's the kind of the way how I see that you can either like try to survive on your own, or then you can reach out to others, because I really believe that 1+1 is so much more than 2.
But it's really, for me, great that we're working and we're talking about the laws of being entrepreneur, because I don't know exactly how is it in Netherlands, Belgium, or Finland, but like in Poland, like has become a little bit like a corporate myth that, the best thing you can do is just kind of leave the corporation, set up your own shop, and basically live happily ever after. And it's not like that. I mean, I don't know, maybe your experiences are a little bit better, but for me, I don't know, like let's say in the last half a year, like for 3 months, I didn't have any clients. And this is the moment where like it's scary, because then you think like, okay, is it over? Like, yeah, you had a good run, a couple of years, but now, no clients, thank you very much. Yeah, we're done. And then obviously, like, you start to dig into your savings, which is, very uncomfortable situation where you don't see your account balance just growing, but suddenly going the different direction. And I think you have to kind of acknowledge that these situations are going to happen. And from me, like, I had an advice about the cash flow before I actually started working to kind of to try to look at the cash flow from, let's say, yearly perspective rather than month per month, because kind of ultimately when you sometimes think you had a really bad year, but you look a bad month or a couple of months, you look at it from the yearly perspective and turns out like, okay, maybe it's not so bad overall, like kind of the average becomes okay. And I think this is a great advice, but it doesn't help out when, you go second month without pay, for instance. Yes.
One of the things that I personally have the most difficulties with, and I don't know if that if you recognize this for yourself as well, Ellis, but rejection is something that I dread. And sometimes there are projects that you run and you see them go sideways, or a client that says no, or that is something that touches me.
Yeah, I think I can agree on that one. And it's also for me, even when there isn't any problem, I beforehand imagine like, what if this, what if that, what if, and that I think that I'm a thinker. I think through every possible angle and every possible way in which the project could go. And sometimes that is like, yeah, taking my energy sometimes because, yeah, maybe I sometimes have to think a little bit less. But I can also like recognize a lot in the story of Anamaya, because I think for me the most important low is actually because I'm trying to like build a network with like-minded people, but I'm not still very much there. I started 1.5 years ago for full time as entrepreneur, so I still feel like a little bit in the start of this journey, and making every decision on my own while being a thinker and overthinking everything. That would, for me, is I'm very much missing sometimes a colleague, which I can ask, what would you do in this situation? And of course I can ask family and friends, but then like they can't really they do help me, they try to help me, but it's like different from their perspective, and they cannot really get what I'm dealing, what I'm thinking about, and how I deal with that problem. So
I can fully
yeah,
relate to that. I think earlier in my career, when I was a junior consultant, I had the mindset that I need to have an answer to every single question that my
yeah,
customer asks me. And I'll give you a story. When I started in a corporate, I had a super lovely manager from the beginning. And I remember she gave me very valuable feedback early on because I had moved from consultancy to an in-house role. And she told me once that, hey, Anna, have you noticed that you have a tendency to give an answer to everything? It's okay to say that, hey, I don't know. Can I get back to you? And that really changed everything in my mindset because I had adopted the traditional consultancy way of thinking that I need to deliver value in every single second. So I need to have an answer to everything. Otherwise, I'm not credible. But I think the true credibility actually comes from saying that, hey, I don't know. This is not my area of expertise, or this is something I haven't done before, but I will find out and we can find out together.
Yeah, I think it's not so much a skill set then, as well as a mindset. It's it's how you are positioned in life. So let's talk about what goes on between your ears. The mental game of entrepreneurship is often the hardest part, I think. And maybe that one is a good one for you, Bartek. But when there is no one checking in on you, how do you stay motivated and productive?
Yes, it's not easy with me personally. I'm like, in full transparency, like I'm a relatively lazy person in general. Like I don't like to work. Like I've never been like this kind of hard worker that just kind of goes in and gives it all from 9 to 5, etc. Like I always work in kind of highs and lows. So for me, let's say this kind of entrepreneurship is great for the lows part, because I think in the last 3 years, I've never played this much Civilization that, I have played before, like, or different computer games to just relax. I know, sorry. No, but I really struggle with that sometimes. Yeah. But then kind of, that's why for me, like getting this kind of system of actually getting things done, like is really, really important. Because on one hand, I know that I need this kind of off time, because this is actually like very useful in terms of, your mind is still thinking about the project anyway. Yeah. Like you're still considering different things, or kind of, the ideas will pop in. But in order to actually, what I have came up with, what works for me, is that I kind of set up the deadlines with the clients to deliver certain things. Yeah. So kind of, whenever, and it's tough because you have a project where you ultimately need to deliver something by, I don't know, in 2 months, for instance. Yeah. But I kind of slice it into pieces, and I very openly say to the client whenever I have, like, I set up usually like once or twice a week, like an update, so like even half an hour, where are we with the project? And then I say, like, okay, on the next project update, I will deliver you this and that. Yeah. And if I set up the system that I will look stupid if I don't deliver that, kind of this is something that helps me to kind of, to turn off the civilization or other games, and to actually, sit down and deliver and work the things, work the stuff. And I think it kind of works, but it is a tough one. Yeah.
I see.
I don't know if I sold myself well through that, but well.
Yeah, I think I think like structure, and that's also not an easy one for me as well, because it doesn't very much comes that much naturally. And yeah, I'm still learning that as well. I'm still trying different things, but like for me, I think I'm not sure how to explain it, but it's also the highs and lows, I guess, because I think of myself as like having quite creative ideas, but then that I have to be in a flow in order to reproduce them. And that's a difficult part for me right now. I can't say Monday at 9 o'clock, let's start. And then sometimes I sit before my screen like 2 hours producing nothing. And then Friday night, I'm very much producing. So, but like that's kind of a struggle for me as well.
Yeah, I hear that. Anamaya, does it work differently for you?
I'm actually super organized.
Yeah, I was when I saw you kind of reacting, I thought that you do not have this issue, no?
No, I love Excel. I am super organized. To be honest, I am like, that's how I structure my client work. We have like a 30-minute catch up every single week. I keep a log on everything that's going, not just on my side, but also on their side, because I think that's one really key thing, that sometimes things don't advance if you are waiting for your client, for instance, to initiate like a call internally or book a meeting with certain people, which you cannot approach yourself. So, I mean, you need to have this transparency. So, but this is about how to manage projects effectively. And that's something I know like by heart. But when it comes to this, like what Ellis you were saying about this innovation and this flow, that requires that you actually, I think that requires that you have like a more quiet period with your client work, because if you are busy, it's impossible to be like, at least for me, innovative at the same time. So I need to kind of like be in a situation where I don't have that much client work, which one could say that that's a bad situation for a consultant. But then that can actually be the kind of the deal breaker in terms of coming up with new innovative ways of doing things or ideas or concepts, because I don't, at least for me, it doesn't work in a way that I set a time like on Monday in the morning to be innovative. No, it comes when I'm running or in a shower or I have a 2 week off. Then those innovative ideas come to my mind. They don't come on the day to day. But I think this
You have to
structure is
try
really
computer
important.
games.
Yes, or when you are playing the video games, I mean, like that can be the moment actually when your
Yeah,
brain
exactly.
gets new ideas. And I mean, because no one is productive all the time, I think that's
Yeah.
just like nonsense.
Yeah, I think at some point you need to know a lot more about yourself, and what your preferred rhythm is. All right, we're coming to the end of our time together. By the way, I want to do a quick piece of advice for someone who's sitting where you were before you made the leap. Now, Anamaya, if you could put up a billboard on the side of a highway where potential entrepreneurs drive at 100 kilometers per hour, what will your sign say to them?
Say that you cannot lead with fear.
That's a nice one. You cannot lead with fear.
How do you follow that?
I mean, all of us have insecurities, and all of us have moments when we think that, how am I going to pull this through? Every single person in the world, we all have those moments. But I think, like, if you are an entrepreneur and you're scared, it really kind of, like, I think, hinders your success a lot, because nobody knows what's going to happen in the next month or in the 3 months or the next year. And there are moments when all of your projects have just stopped and you need to sell the new ones. So all of us have been there. And I mean, if you are constantly afraid, what's going to happen next? This is not the life for you then. I mean, then I think it's better to be in a corporate role where you at least have some visibility to the next 12 months. But at the same time, I mean, this is also the best part of being an entrepreneur, because you can really kind of like do the things that you are inspired and feel motivated to do, and you can shape it. But I mean, like, try to kind of manage that feeling of, coming from fear, more like coming from a place of like curiosity or learning, or I mean, this genuine willingness to help your customers. If that is your biggest motivation, it shows. And similarly, I think fear shows if you have a lot of fear.
Okay.
Wow. Thank you.
Okay, now I have my own. So no,
Perfect.
no, but I was thinking that, kind of reflecting a little bit on what you said. But for me, I think that kind of this kind of piece of advice to put on a billboard is like, do things your way, because I think that kind of, there are 4 of us in here, and everyone has different approach to this. Like, we roughly do the same job in terms of helping companies, grow, build, however we phrase it. But I don't think that there's like a one single recipe to that. And I think that if you try to fit into this kind of consultant persona that you might imagine, however you imagine it, then it's not going to work. Like, people are going to sense it. You're going to feel uncomfortable. And, the whole reason of doing that is so that you actually have, better job or life satisfaction than you did previously. And I think you only get that once you just accept the fact that you're going to do things your way, and some of the people are not going to buy it, but some will. And hopefully, the balance between those is going to be a little bit in the favor of you, but just, enjoy it.
Yeah. It's a pity that I didn't go first because I actually
Sorry, I stole yours.
do it your way. But like, completely agree with you. And to give you one example why I think I would put that advice on a billboard is like, when I started, and I'm still in that startup phase, when I started, I asked for a lot of opinions. I really followed advice. And for example, in sales, I did some sales, but not a lot. So I'm quite unexperienced in the sales part of the job. But I did have like a small sales training in which I learned some techniques. And then when I started for myself, I was constantly thinking about, okay, which technique should I use? How could I do this? How can I sell this thing? And then I was finding myself sitting in those conversations, very nervous, very not me. And then I thought, well, this is not going to work because I don't really like it. So how can I make this more fun? And then I thought, okay, well, what if I stop selling? And what if I imagine that for the half an hour or the 1 hour that I have this conversation, what if I imagine that I'm part of their team and just find a solution for their problem? And sometimes that is not even my services. And I'm saying, I think you have to look somewhere else. But since I decided to have that approach, it feels a lot of more like me, and I have a lot of more fun in it. I think do it your way, and then maybe that's not the way of someone else. Maybe others don't really get that, but you have to make it fun for you. And the only way you can do that is do it your way, I guess.
We can share a billboard then.
Perfect.
Cost saving, important part of entrepreneurship.
That's great. Wow, fantastic.
And Michel, what would you put on yours?
Yeah, I'm curious too.
I would probably say something like, be human. It is strange that when we put our business hats on, that sometimes we default to a language that people just don't understand anymore. We have our own jargon, we have our own acronyms, and that makes it complicated. We talk about customer satisfaction a lot. We talk about net promoter score, customer effort score, whatever metric you have out there. But actually, at the end of the day, it's about making more money or having a better margin or reducing your costs, right? We do that through customer happiness or customer experience or customer focus, whatever you want to call it. But it's a way to achieve something. Yeah, I think that people need to force themselves much more often to speak like a human and focus on that. Yeah, that would be my advice. So yeah, we're absolutely coming to an end now. To everyone listening, the decision to become an entrepreneur in customer experience isn't one that you take lightly. But as our guests here have shown, it can be incredibly rewarding for those who go in with their eyes wide open. Now, the biggest question isn't whether you are good enough, because if you're considering this path, you probably are. The real questions are you ready for uncertainty? Can you handle wearing multiple hats? And most importantly, are you prepared to bet on yourself? So thank you, Ellis. Thank you, Bartek. Thank you, Anamaya, for your brutally honest and invaluable insights. And thank you also for listening to this episode. If this conversation sparked something in you, we'd love to hear about it. Until then, see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.